this segment, I like to cover how to properly open up a cork finished bottle of wine. Now, most people are able to pop the cork, get the wine in the glass, no big deal. But in the professional restaurant setting, I really like to stress a handful of details, and there's two reasons why I do this. First of all, if you're a server who becomes confident in opening up a bottle of wine, you're proficient in getting the cork out, doing your service techniques, then that's really going to reflect well upon you, upon the restaurant, and it's going to enhance your guest experience. The second reason why I like to stress this is that if you're a service member who becomes efficient at opening up a bottle of wine, you can probably grab a few seconds from what it might have taken you to open up that bottle of wine and devote that extra time to some other aspect in that guest experience. So let's go through the techniques for opening up a bottle of wine. Now, as a service member, sommelier, manager perhaps, the guest has ordered a bottle of wine and I've retrieved it from the bar or service bar or maybe the cellar. Before I get back to the table, first of all, I'm going to check to make sure this was the wine that was ordered by the guest. I want to make sure it's the exact wine. If there's a vineyard designation, I want to make sure it's the correct vineyard designation, and I double check that vintage to make sure it's exactly what the guest ordered. Just saves me some time before having to go back to the table. Maybe there's an issue, having to come back again and retrieve something else. So check it. While I'm checking it, and on my way to the table, there's a couple quick tips that will help me when I get there. First of all, if I'm not really familiar with the wine, often if you flip the bottle over, there's a lot of information on the back label. It'll tell you what the varietal is, maybe a little bit about the producer, something that you can maybe help to add to the conversation with the guest if that's appropriate. The second thing that I really want to make sure I do is, while I'm checking the names and the other terms or designations that are on the label, I want to run through how to say them. And I think that's one of the things that service members sometimes forget to do, because when you get to the table and you're all of a sudden going to describe and present this to your guests, you want to make sure you can actually say the terms and say the names and the places properly. So just take a second before you get to the table and go through that. I know it's tough sometimes when you're rushing to remember this, but this is kind of an important step, and like I said, I think it's something that's often forgotten. So there's a lot of information on the label that will help you. When you get to the table, you're going to present the bottle of wine to the guest. Now, I'm right-handed. If you're left-handed, just flip these. But I always like to put my left hand towards the top of the bottle, and my left hand my right hand, on the bottom of the bottle, so that as I present it, I'm presenting it, and I present over the right shoulder, as you should. As you present this, it's going to be presented to the guests so that they can see the entire label. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go through the terms that are here. I'd like to start with the producer's name. In this case, it's called Redwood. Then I will go to the varietal, or if it's a classic European designation, the place that it was produced. In this case, it's Zinfandel. Then I'll go to some sort of designation. Proprietary name, a vineyard designation, maybe some other term that they put on here just to segregate this as a separate wine. In this case, it's called Old Vines. And then the region that it comes from, which is Amador County, and this is the 2010 vintage. So producer, varietal, or place of origin, any kind of proprietary names that might be designated here, or in the case of a Burgundy, it might be a Premier Cru or a Grand Cru, and then the region that the wine is made and the vintage that it is produced from. So once I've gone through all this information, the guest will say yes or no. He'll confirm that it is in fact the wine that they've ordered, and now we're going to get into how to open this up. Now, most service staff members will have some sort of wine key that is like this. This is the preferred style in the restaurant setting, and the reason why it's great is because it has two levels. It has what we call a double hinged, or it's hinged and has a double level, and we use these for a little bit better efficient opening. So these are great corkscrews that most people have. They come in all different shapes and sizes. I like this one. It's a little bit different style, but it's a great style of corkscrew. So become familiar with this. Make sure you have one. If it's worn out a little bit, sometimes they get loose over time. The knives get dull. Get it replaced. Most people will get them from their wine purveyors or from their management staff. So after the guest has confirmed the bottle of wine is correct, we're going to pull our corkscrew out. We're going to open up the knife. Now I've got the top of the bottle I'm holding with my left hand. I've opened up the knife, and I'm going to put the blade facing away from me, because what I want to do is I actually want to cut the back of the bottle first. And if you look at this bottle, there's a rim around the top, and this is the way most bottles are produce these days. And I'm going to take my knife and I'm going to put it right underneath that little rim. Okay, that's going to give me a nice pressure point to push against as I cut this foil. So I want to cut the back side first. I'm going to put my thumb against the blade and I'm going to push nice and firm and pull all the way across the back of the bottle. Okay, now you've noticed that the label is still facing my guest and I haven't turned it around. I'm going to then flip my corkscrew over, my knife over. I'm going to put it on the front, come over to where I started my last cut, drag all the way across the front till I meet the second cut. And it's at this point where the foil should be trimmed off. Now what I'm going to do is actually turn my blade up a little bit and I'm going to grab the foil and just create a little mark or perhaps pull it off. And this will help me pull the top of the foil off in one clean sweep. And then I'm going to take that foil and stick it in my pocket or my apron, close my knife. Now just to go back through that real quick, I cut around the back side, I then flipped over, cut across the front side, and then I dragged my knife up the side and pulled that foil capsule right off. Okay? Now this whole time the label is face the guest, which I think is really important. I hate it when I go in and I see service staff members turning corkscrew right around the top and that bottle spins around. That's not what we want to do. Keep that label facing your guest so that they can always view it and always review it if they need to. So I've got my corkscrew. I'm going to open it up now, pull out the lever, pull out the worm, which is the screw part. And what I like to do is all of these corkscrews are fashioned with a little point on the end that is facing away from me if I'm right-handed. And I'm going to take that little point and I'm actually going to lay the bottom portion of the screw along the bottle. And I'm going to put that point right in the center of the bottle and I'm going to push down. Now I'm going to do this standing like this with my label facing the guest. But I'm going to push it right down in the middle and give it a little screw so that that corkscrew actually sets into the bottle. And then it should take me 1, 2, 3, 4, usually 4, and sometimes 5, but you have to kind of be a judge, and a little experience here is important because if that cork is going to be short, and some corks are very short, you don't want to go through the bottom of the cork. So I usually stop at 4. Looks like I've got a good seating. I'm going to take my left-hand thumb. I'm now actually holding the wine with this hand, my right hand. I'm going to take my left-hand thumb and I'm going to push my corkscrew's lever just so it catches the lip of the bottle. And then with my right hand, I'm going to use the lever action. I'm going to push pressure with my backside thumb. And together, I'm going to make sure that that cork comes up nice and straight, not really moving too much. Once I get to the point where I've exhausted that lift, I'm going to move up to the next level. Still a little pressure with my backside thumb, and then even pressure with the lever side. And I'm going to work that cork right up to the point where I can feel it just about to give. And this is where I'm going to stop. I get to this point, I'm actually going to take my hand and put it around the front of the bottle, around the cork itself, and I'm just going to give it a little twist and pull it off. Now the reason I do this is because I don't want to rip the cork out, I don't want to pop it out and have wine come out, maybe spill on me or get on my hands or even on the guest. I just want to control that little as it comes out and have a nice clean exit for this cork. Now what I do here at this point is I take my 2 fingers that are holding the bottle and I grasp the cork, I twist it out, I take my corkscrew, put it away in my pocket, my apron. Now once I've opened up this bottle of wine, I have the cork in my hand and I just take a quick little sniff to make sure that the cork, I almost don't even let the guests see this. And I'm just checking for myself to make sure that there isn't any off odors or there might be something that would indicate that the wine might not be completely sound. In this case, the wine is fine. The cork looks nice and sturdy, it's nice and clean. There was no, it never got heated up or there's no leaking or weeping on the cork. So I know things are probably pretty fine. Most corks these days come with a little imprint of the winery stamped on the side of them. I'm going to make sure that that's lined up facing the guest when I put it on the table. I'm going to put it right next to the glass or just in front of the glass that I'm going to be pouring into. The other thing that I do is I always have a napkin or a serviette in my pocket or my apron, and this is a critical tool because when you go to pour, you want to make sure that you're going to catch any drips that might be coming off. you don't want them going on the table, staining the tablecloth, or even worse, going on a guest's shoulder or maybe pants or whatever. So I'm going to have this. And before I pour, I want to make sure I just wipe the top, make sure there isn't any little cork residue. Sometimes there's some crystals or sediment that might be collected there that would be there, or even on older bottles a little bit of mold that might have collected on the top. So just wipe the top off, make sure it's nice and clean when you're going to pour. Put about half an ounce or so, and as I pick the bottle up, I like to make sure I bring that napkin right up underneath the edge of the bottle and catch any drips on it. I then actually turn the bottle over, again, as I'm waiting for the guest to confirm that their glass of wine or their bottle of wine is sound. I'm going to use that little serviette as a frame for the bottle, just rest it on my hand, again, having the label facing the guest while they're assessing the wine so that they can review or look at it if they'd like. Perhaps there's another guest who would like to see it. And I wait for the guest to confirm that the wine is sound. And once that's happened, I'm going to go through serving the rest of the guests, and we'll go through that in another segment. So just to recap real quickly, going through and becoming proficient and confident at opening up bottles of wine tableside, I think is one of the more critical skills and details that a server can learn. One of the best ways, and probably one of the most important things that I can stress, is that if you are not confident in opening up bottles of wine, practice. Practice, practice, practice. And there's plenty of wine bottles that get opened up in a restaurant every day that aren't going out to the table side. These are the wines by the glass. Talk with your manager or the bartender. Ask them if you can practice with a couple bottles at the beginning of service. This is a great way to really become better at it. Make sure when you open up those bottles, you're not just cranking them open, but you're actually thinking about the steps that we just talked about, that I just detailed, and you use these every time you open up a bottle of wine. So, when you get the bottle, as a quick review, just read the label, make sure it's the wine that the guest ordered, and make sure that you can actually pronounce and know and are familiar with these terms. When you get to the table, make sure that you keep the label facing the guest the entire time. Make sure that you cut the back side, then the front side of the foil. Don't spin the bottle. Quickly pull the top of the capsule off that you've just cut. Go through the process of opening up the bottle of wine, and the biggest thing I can talk about at that point is make sure you use both hands. You want to provide that little counterbalance to the cork so that it comes straight up out of the bottle and you're not rocking back and forth and perhaps breaking that cork. Once you get it out, place the cork on the table, present the bottle of wine to the guests, pour a little bit for them to assess, and once confirmed, go through your steps for the rest of the guests and serve the wine. So, a great skill to learn. Practice, 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 opening bottles of wine.